Welcome everyone. Thanks so much for joining. My name's Ellie Turner. I am the Deputy Agriculture Lead at 60 Decibels. And I will start by saying that I'm not planning for this to take 60 minutes. I'm the only speaker in this session, and so I don't think you'd like to listen to me talk for an hour virtually. So I'll try to keep it around 30 minutes, and if there's extra questions, then we can stay on. Again, I'm Ellie. I'm the Deputy Agriculture Lead at 60 Decibels. My background is in implementing food security agriculture market systems projects for USAID, other donors, also doing impact evaluations, all before I joined 60 Decibels. So excited to share with you a little bit about our work in digital agriculture today. Okay, so just to get us started and sort of set the stage for what we're going to talk about, it's really this idea that I think more than any other technology, I think digital solutions have this promise and this potential to really transform smallholder agriculture. And I think everyone who's at this event or in this session probably already knows that and knows why, right? Because the challenge of reaching smallholders is so great. They are so dispersed, they're disconnected from markets. And a lot of the challenges in productivity and income have to do with how remote they are and how hard it is to serve them physically due to this distance. And really, digital solutions have the potential to solve this. And so I think everyone for the last decade has been so excited about this potential for transformation, more so than really for any technology probably since the hybrid seed. But I think we have to keep in mind that there are 600 million smallholder farmers out there, right? And so in order for this transformation to happen, for this promise of transformation to be realized, these solutions can't just exist, they have to scale. We can't just reach a few thousand or even a few 100,000 farmers with a digital tool. We have to go much bigger than that. And we know that this kind of transformation is possible with digital tools, right? We've seen the power of digital solutions. They can, when they work, when they really provide a value to users, they can fully transform the way a person does something, even if that person has been doing it for their whole life, right? So think about like the Ubers or the Amazons of the world, or even something closer like an M-Pesa. Scale is possible, right? Like you can totally change the way someone is doing something, and it can result in millions or even billions of people adopting a technology. So I think this potential is real. But we're going to have to deliver scale, and that's what I want to talk about today. And so when we talk about scale for digital tools, we really haven't seen any smallholder agriculture solutions that have achieved this yet. The stats on this page are, I think, from like 2020, so they're a little bit outdated, but at the time of this CTA report, there was like 15 digital ag solutions that had passed the 1 million registered user mark. And that's 1 million registered users, which I'm going to talk about a lot today as a really weak metric for understanding the scale of a solution, right? Because if a registered user just has to download an app and give their phone number, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're engaging with it or that they're using it or that they're willing to pay for it, right? So how do we get to scale? So the sort of unicorn tech companies that I just mentioned didn't achieve scale by accident, right? They tapped into something that a user really values. And they also did extensive user research testing to make sure that the solution that they're developing was delivering the best experience possible to the user. And so today, what we're going to focus on is really how an ag tech company or a company that's delivering a solution digitally to a farmer can better understand their farmer users in order to get to scale. Just looking at these metrics like registered users or even active users doesn't tell you enough about how a farmer is using a service to predict if it is in a position to grow. We don't really understand from looking at if a farmer is an active user or not, if they're really truly getting value from a service, and if it's really changing the way they're doing it. And so today, we're going to focus mostly on data and on looking at better metrics and better ways of understanding the user experience as reducing a barrier to scale of some of these solutions. And I just want to say up front that I completely recognize that connectivity is an enormous barrier to scale for these digital solutions, but it's not what I'm going to focus on today. I think there's other organizations that are tackling connectivity, and it's not me. So we're going to focus mostly on data and metrics today and how we can use that to help tech solutions reach scale. Okay, so what am I going to talk about today? Three things. The first is I'm going to give you an introduction to 60 decibels. So assuming that you don't know who we are, just give you a quick intro, walk you through what we do, who we are, why we do it. The second thing we're going to do is give you an overview to some new research that we're doing, which is population level data on farmer digital engagement. And the third thing is to introduce a new initiative that 60 decibels is undertaking called the 60 decibels Digital Agriculture Index. Okay, so who are we at 60 decibels? 60 decibels is a social performance measurement company. So we were founded inside the Acumen Fund. If you're familiar with the Acumen Fund, it's one of the biggest, earliest global impact investors. And back in the day, about 10 years ago, maybe almost 12 years ago now, they set out to figure out a better way to measure impact. And so previously in the impact investing space, the norm had been really to count the number of lives reached and treat that as your impact. And Acumen said, that's not good enough. We want to figure out a way to understand lives changed. So what are the impact outcomes that we're having on all those lives that we're reaching? And so they set out to develop a methodology to do this. And once they developed the methodology and other funds started asking them to do these studies for them, they spun us out and formed a separate company called 60 decibels. 60 decibels, the name of the company, is the volume of human conversation. And that's because we believe that in order to measure social impact, you have to listen to the people on whom you're trying to have that impact. And the origin story of our origin inside of Acumen is important for a lot of reasons, but one of the reasons that it's important is because we really bring that focus of the investor and the company lens to our data collection and our insights. And so it's never really about like donor reporting with 60 decibels. It's always about how can we communicate our impact to investors, and how as a company, how can the social enterprise use the data to improve their performance, to improve their impact. So it's always very actionable, very clear, very management-oriented data. Okay, so how do we work? I mentioned listening is our thing, right? 60 decibels is the volume of human conversation. And so really, we're a listening company. We just, as we're testing different methodologies to sort of figure out what is that right size solution to listen to people at scale, what we landed on was a 15-minute phone conversation with an end beneficiary. An end user is enough to get you that depth of insight to really understand how someone's life has changed, while still allowing you to speak with a representative sample of your user population. And so really our model is to do these quick 15-minute phone conversations, and we built the infrastructure to be able to do that all over the world in 80 countries. So when we conduct interviews, it is real people who live in that country, who speak the local language, who understand the context. They are 60 decibels researchers, and they're making phone calls. They're having conversations with the smallholder farmers who are using those solutions to understand how has your life changed, how has your production changed, what would you improve about this solution, things like that. The final sort of pillar of what we do, I'm going to talk about this a lot today as well, is our benchmarked performance. And so we really promote standardization in impact measurement for a lot of reasons. One is because it drives down the overall cost and makes impact management and impact measurement easier and lower cost and lower effort for everyone. It also promotes accountability and transparency, using the same questions that are proven, that are tested, that don't present any bias in their responses. It's really useful. But the main thing that really helps with, that standardization really helps with, is establishing performance benchmarks. We have asked the same question to thousands and thousands, hundreds of thousands of people all over the world. And so we know, on average, in a given region, in a given sector, how an end user is going to respond to a question. So when we ask your company's beneficiaries to respond to that question, we can contextualize them and say, okay, 20% of your users or your farmers say that their quality of life has improved as a result of your service. But in East Africa, the benchmark for that is actually 35%. So you're underperforming the benchmark. And that just makes the data a little bit more powerful. Just a quick snapshot of our presence. I mentioned we have researchers in 80 countries. These are local researchers who are speaking the language. Those are the ones that are making the phone calls, that are having those conversations with farmers. And you can see the red dots where we have offices where we have 60 decibel staff. And finally, just to give you a quick snapshot to put it into perspective, these are some of the ag companies that we've worked with. It's not all of them, it's just a handful. They're not all digital solutions. I just sort of grabbed a snapshot and put them up there so you could get an example, really get a feel for, okay, who are we talking to when we say we talk to smallholder farmers? They are the suppliers or the customers of companies like the ones you see on the screen. I will take a pause there and see if there are any questions about 60 decibels, about anything that I've said so far. I can't see the chat at the moment, so Nicole, please chime in if you see anything.
I'm not currently seeing any questions, but if anyone has any questions, please feel free to put them in Q&A, or if you raise your hand, we may be able to let you ask the question out loud. Can take just a minute to see if anybody has any questions for this piece.
Okay, cool. I'll keep going. Send the questions if you have them. Okay, so I'm going to shift gears a little bit to talk about a specific project that we've been working on at 60 decibels for almost a year and a half now. Now, normally what 60 decibels does is we work with a company, we talk to their end users, and we collect feedback, and we understand what their impact has been. That's everything that I've explained so far that 60 decibels does. But we entered into a partnership with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and the Busara Center for Behavioral Economics almost 2 years ago to do a little bit of a different exercise. And this was to understand more broadly at a population level, what does access and use to digital services look like for smallholder farmers? Now, if you're in the ag space, you know that you can get national level data on things like hybrid seed adoption or fertilizer use, right? There are national surveys and there are established metrics that cover some of these basic things about agriculture. But because digital solutions are much newer, they don't show up in those types of surveys, and there aren't established metrics for how we measure them. And so we set out on this learning journey with the foundation to establish a methodology for measuring access to digital services among smallholder farmers. And our goal was really, the goal of the research is really, like, first to develop a methodology, but the methodology is aimed at understanding what's the coverage of digital services for a whole population? Where are there gaps in digital services? And where are there market opportunities that a digital solution provider could address? Where should they be targeting if they want to get adoption of a new service? We really want to provide a demand side view. So if you Google like data on like digital ag solutions, you get a lot of sort of supply side reports that say, oh, there's 900 digital agriculture services providers in the world, and there's this much investment in it. It's very supply side focused, and we really wanted to complement that with a demand side view. What are farmers saying? Do they know about digital services? Where are they using them and how? And we wanted to establish standard metrics for doing this. So we have rolled out population level data collection in 3 geographies: Nigeria, Kenya, and Bihar state in India, where we are looking at a national survey or a state level survey in Bihar of digital access for farmers. And so we've piloted it. We've done 1 round of data collection in every geography. And so we're just taking this opportunity to give you a sort of sneak preview of some of the early results, what they might look like when we have the full results, and then sort of let you know what's coming down the pipe. So, excuse me. Here's a snapshot of what we did in Kenya. So we did the survey with 2,600 farmers. We recruited them to be as nationally representative as possible. While we weren't able to get into every county, we got into 39 counties and randomly selected farmers. And then we placed phone calls to those farmers to conduct the surveys. And we're splitting this up into 3 surveys. So these results that I'm going to share with you are just from the first round, which was post-planting. We have completed another round, or we're in the middle of another round of post-harvest data collection. Then we'll do another round of post-selling. And if you look at the circles over on the left, this is sort of our framework for understanding how a farmer engages with a digital service, a digital agricultural solution. So we call it an engagement funnel, sort of a visual. If you think about it from the outside in, you can be all farmers, and the first step is them just being aware that digital services are out there. The next step is them actually having access to it. The next step is that they actually use it, they sign up for it. And what we're really trying to get at and define a way to measure is that middle circle there, which says meaningful use. And this is sort of one of the objectives of our research, is basically to get at a better metric that works better than active use, right? Because if you think about active use, every company could define it differently, right? If you are a digital advisory services provider and you're sending SMSs to a farmer every day, maybe active use means that they read like one per month or one per week. But if you are a digital insurance provider where people are subscribing to crop insurance through their phone, really they just need to log on the one time. So what does active use mean for them? So one of our efforts is to try to define a metric for meaningful use that we can use across all types of digital agricultural solutions to understand if it's meaningful for them. So sorry, guys. Of course, I start coughing as soon as I start presenting. Okay. So I'm just going to walk you through a couple of key findings that we found from this Kenya data collection that we did. So on the left-hand side here, you see the digital engagement funnel for Kenya. The gray is all farmers. The purple is the number of farmers who said they were using any type of digital solution. And then it goes down from there. Within the non-users, you have users who said that they had access and those who said that they didn't have access. And I'll say that we dropped awareness here as one of the levels because most people who were aware also had access because it was available in their area, right? And that would be the only reason that they were aware of it. So that's the engagement funnel on the left. We found that 27% of Kenyan farmers in the counties that we surveyed were using some sort of digital service. On the second side of the slide, you see the 5 categories of digital services that we look at. And so we sort of bucket every single type of DFS, and they're called DFS, it's the Gates Foundation terminology, it's digital farmer services. We bucket them into these 5 categories. Information and advisory, so these are your SMS advisories, your training, your digital ag extension. The second one is inputs and equipment. This is where you're accessing some sort of seeds marketplace. Maybe you're learning about different inputs, you're ordering inputs, maybe you're renting a tractor from Hello Tractor. The third one is farm credit. So this is any type of financing that you're getting for your farm through your phone. The last one, or the second to last one, is market access. So connecting with buyers or selling your produce. The last one is farm insurance. And so we saw here that the most common cluster here is information and advisory, which is 18%. And really it was almost negligible for market access and farm insurance. So here we go. Because information and advisory services was the type of DFS that we saw used most frequently, I've pulled some examples of the key performance metrics that we looked at here on this slide. And so the first thing to note, we look at this for every metric is, for every cluster, is direct versus facilitated use. And here's where we're trying to measure, is a farmer using their own phone or their own tablet to engage with a service, or are they working with some sort of agent who works for a company, who works with government, who works for some sort of organization who is helping them use a phone or showing them something on a tablet to facilitate the use of the adoption. And in Kenya, we saw that 60% or 59% are using directly, which is pretty high. Just to contrast this, in Bihar, those who are using it, it's almost exclusively facilitated, I believe. So they are using it with agents, and that sort of speaks to the different levels of digital engagement across the geography. And then on the right-hand side, these are just a couple of example metrics that I pulled. So you can see the types of things that we're getting. And so these are performance metrics for digital information providers. So we're looking at, did it make it easier for you to receive information about your farming and livestock? Was it trustworthy? And then a couple more on the next slide. How much of your needs for information and advisory did this service meet? And did you receive the information at the right time? This is a tiny snapshot of what we've done in Kenya. There are many, many metrics that we have collected, and our goal is to make all of this data public so that it can be used by different DFS providers who are looking to enter a market, different donors that are looking to fund certain programs. All of this is going to be available publicly, and we're really excited about it. So please stay tuned on this. I'll take a pause here while I continue coughing and see if anyone has any questions specifically about the Kenya population research that I've talked about.
If anyone has any questions, feel free to raise your hand. You're also welcome to throw a question in either the chat or the Q&A. We have a few minutes. Does anybody have a question that they would like Ellie to consider?
Looks like we have one. Abel?
We have one. Abel, are you able to talk?
Yeah, I'm able to talk. I'm just curious, how did you reach the decision to split these digital technologies into the categories that you mentioned? One, on information, insurance, and farm credit. How did you reach that decision?
Sure. These are pretty common categories for most agricultural solutions, and it's pretty collectively exhaustive, right? There's not a lot of solutions that fall outside of those 5 categories. And so it was aligned with a lot of the way that research is done in this space to cluster them. We started with, some of them fit into like ultra clusters, right? And so if you think about credit and insurance, those are both financial services. And so we sort of started as them both being financial services, but then we split them because we really wanted to have different performance metrics, because we thought that insurance should perform in a different way than credit. And similarly on market access, one is input market access and one is output market access. And so those are similar, and they all sort of fit under a market access cluster. But we wanted, when we started developing the performance metrics, we wanted to be able to have different metrics for the different clusters. And really what it comes down to at the end of the day is we want companies to be able to compare themselves to other companies that look like them, that are in their sort of subsector or cluster, as it were. And we know that almost every company is doing more than one of these things, right? Like a lot of input companies or a lot of buyers are also providing training. And so we would just ask both of those questions. And so comparability is a little bit hard, but it's generally our end goal at the end of the day.
Right. Thanks, Ellie.
Sure. Anything else? Okay, cool. I will keep going then. All right, so that was all about understanding the market for digital solutions, like at a national level, right? Now I'm going to pivot back to looking at users of specific solutions, which is sort of where we started, and really what 60 decibels is mostly doing at the end of the day, right? Usually we work with a company and we listen to their users and we understand impact and performance. And so I'm excited to share with you, this is a new initiative that we've launched this year called the 60 Decibels Digital Agriculture Index. Okay, so why do we need a digital agriculture index? I've talked about a lot of these things already, but I'm gonna just go through them quickly. So the first thing is just, we need a way to listen to the users of these tech solutions, right? We need to understand the user journey, their satisfaction, and uncover value, what farmers value most, in order to understand which features need to change in order to scale, in order to understand which companies are performing best, right? And how farmers are engaging with the solution. The second thing is really to standardize ag tech performance measurement. And so it's really hard, as I mentioned, to take active use or to take registered users and say, okay, this one ag tech is performing better than this other one, right? Because they're sort of fundamentally different. What we want to do is have a way that all companies can measure their impact, can measure their performance in a way that is standardized, and so that you can compare one to another. Of course, we want to measure impact, and we want to do it without the burden, right? Like, as I mentioned earlier, the people who are running these companies don't have time to sit around thinking about monitoring and evaluation, right? Like, they're not donor staff. They're running companies, they're running tech companies. And so we want them to be able to have access to do a simple impact survey where it doesn't take any work for them. They can just sort of like plug and play, and the survey is ready. It's going to give them standardized results. It doesn't take any effort from them. And the last thing is really to identify potential for scale. I think we work with a lot of investors who have invested in a lot of different ag tech startups, and they find it really challenging to understand which of a set of solutions is best positioned to go the long mile, right? So this is really going to reach that 1 million mark. They don't know. They don't know how to measure it. They just look at registered users and active users and they think, okay, maybe this will work, and they have to try. But what we want to get to is a point where you can say that, okay, farmers are engaging with this technology in a way that is meaningful to them. They're willing to pay for it. Like, this one's going to go, and simultaneously identify opportunities for improvement in that solution. So it builds off something that we've always done, which is establish performance benchmarks at 60 decibels. And so we have performance benchmarks that span across all sectors, but we also have performance benchmarks that are specific to our farmer studies. And so we've worked with, right now, our benchmarks include results from 93 different companies and 18,000 farmers. And what this means is when you do just a regular study with 60 decibels and you ask, okay, how has your production changed? How has your farming changed? You can compare your results to other companies in your sector that are also serving smallholder farmers. And we've found this benchmarking exercise to be extremely powerful and extremely useful. And so that's what we're trying to make happen in digital agriculture, right? We think that the metrics might need to be a little different than they are for our standard ag companies. But we want digital ag companies to be able to compare themselves to other digital ag companies when they're measuring their impact. I'm going to take a quick detour from digital agriculture for just a second to sort of show you the power of an index. And this is sort of a lot of what 60 decibels product design is thinking about and trying to leverage some of this power of benchmarks and comparability. So I'm going to introduce you to the 60 decibels microfinance institution index, the MFI index, which is one of our biggest initiatives. It's something that we do every year. We had this year, this is the 2023 summary. This year we had 114 different microfinance institutions participate, and that meant that we conducted interviews with over 32,000 different customers or clients of MFIs. We spoke to each one of them for 21 minutes and we generated results. And so every MFI that participated got a results deck that showed, okay, this is what your borrower would say, here's how you're doing, here's what your impact is, here's what you need to improve. But then at an aggregate level, we were able to put all of that data together to start to draw conclusions about the sector and to help companies benchmark themselves where they fall vis-a-vis their competitors, their peers in other markets and in their markets. And so to give you a sense of what that looks like when we do it at a really big scale like this with MFIs, these are country benchmarks, right? And so it might be a little bit hard to read, but if you see the black dot, that's the global average for these 5 quality indicator or impact indicators that you see across the bottom. And then we have specific countries of focus because it does vary a lot by country. So if you are a MFI in Uganda, you can go into our benchmarks, look at your performance, and then compare them to this red dot and to this black dot and see how you're doing. So this sort of power of the benchmarks is something that's been sort of inspirational and that we're trying to accomplish for digital agriculture, for organizations that are serving farmers through digital solutions. So thanks for that little detour with me. Going back to digital agriculture, here's what we're doing on the digital agriculture index. So here's how it works. Companies sign up that have a digital solution that is aimed at serving farmers. It can be facilitated or direct use. It doesn't matter, but it does have to serve farmers. It takes us about 14 weeks, sometimes less, to do the interviews. The companies provide us with the contact database. We have the phone numbers of the individuals. We're making the phone calls. We contact 275 farmers that are working with each organization because that's enough to get you 90% confidence level and a 5% margin of error. And the survey has 30 questions. It really takes very little energy on the part of the company. And then in 14 weeks, we deliver a 20-page report And our end goal is that once we have sufficient numbers of companies that have signed up, we will be able to deliver an aggregate report as well that shows how one company stacks up against another, how they rank against the performance benchmarks. So what these reports are going to look like are things like this. This is sort of a classic 60 decibels report. I just pulled a couple of the impact metrics, not all of them, because these are anonymous data that wouldn't be, the data itself is not that useful. Just want to give you a sense of sort of the type of thing that you would see in the report. So on the left-hand side, this is a net promoter score. This is a metric. We did not develop this. This, I think, came from Bain or BCG. It's something that we use in almost all of our reports. It's a really great measure of loyalty. And then on the other side, we just have a couple of KPIs. And so these are similar to what you might have seen in, or to what I showed you in the Kenya data, but this time it's going to be company specific. So how would you rate the timeliness of the service delivery? How would you feel if you could no longer use the service? How much of your needs, what portion of your needs are being met by this service? Is it easier or harder for you to sell your service? So this is from a market access example. And then have you experienced any challenges with the company? There are more than these, of course, as I've said, but this is just some examples. And then I, again, as promised, talked to you about benchmarks a lot, but the end goal of this initiative is to be able to deliver something like this graphic to a company that says, okay, here's the benchmark for all digital agriculture solutions, or for all digital agriculture solutions in your cluster. So back to credit or advisory or inputs. Here's the benchmark, and then here's how you're performing on these 5 dimensions. So all the indicators roll up into 5 dimensions of access, satisfaction, well-being impact, livelihood impact, and meaningful use. And then ideally we would have all of the companies and be able to compare them. I'll pause there. Actually, let me do one more. So there's a couple ways to get involved with 60 decibels and everything that I just talked about. So the first thing is just to follow us. So as I mentioned, we are in the middle of this population level research initiative. We have not started disseminating the results publicly yet. I think that will happen in 2024. But if you sign up for our newsletter or follow us on LinkedIn, you won't miss those updates. And also in 2024, as part of our partnership with the foundation, we are developing like learning materials and methodology notes so that these things can be replicated by other organizations. Really, it's designed to be a public good. You can participate in the Digital Agriculture Index if you're interested, if you're an ag tech company. And we do have a sort of exciting opportunity right now, which is that through our work with the Gates Foundation, we're doing some pilot studies. Going back to, I sort of alluded to this meaningful use methodology testing and how we're working on establishing better metrics for measuring meaningful use. And through that, we are looking for companies that are willing to participate in a study. You get a free impact study. We get to sort of understand your perspectives of your farmers, sort of test some correlations between different metrics. It builds our data set and contributes to our learning objectives. That is it. My email address is here. I will take another pause here for a little longer to see if there's any more questions.
Go ahead and feel free to raise your hand if you have a question, and we will unmute you so that you can ask the question.
Okay, amazing. Well, anyone is welcome to email me or visit our website or find us on LinkedIn if you have any other questions, but I will wrap up early as I promised to do. Thanks so much for joining, and have a good rest of your ICT for Ag.